For years, Oda kept Monkey D. Dragon's past shrouded in mystery, revealing only fragments of his story. But in chapter 1159 of the One Piece manga, we discovered that Dragon was present at the God Valley incident. At the time, only 17 years old and still a young marine, he was the one who saved Baby Shanks, hiding him inside a treasure chest. But the chapter also brought a crucial detail about his iconic mark. Even before tattooing his face, Dragon already carried that same symbol on his left arm. We saw that he already bore this symbol when he led the Warriors of Freedom, but now we've learned that this mark has existed since his youth as a Marine. This means the mark didn't originate from his revolutionary life, but from something much earlier, possibly linked to his own lineage. We know that Oda has been increasingly exploring the lineages of his characters, and we're getting closer and closer to the confirmation that Monkey the Dragon carries the blood of the Shandorian race. His physical traits, long hair, darker skin, and the red tattoo closely resemble the warriors of Shandora. But this is just the tip of the iceberg in this whole story. The most important thing is that Dragon's tattoo is the key to understanding the true power of his Akuma no Mi, a god tied to indigenous mythology. In today's video, we're going to talk about everything we know about Monkey D. Dragon's past, the real origin of the mark he carries on his face, and finally uncover the power of his Akuma no Mi. The past of Monkey D. Dragon. In the present, Monkey D. Dragon is known today as the supreme leader of the Revolutionary Army, and a symbol of resistance against the world government. The image we have of him now is that of a calculating man who doesn't even need to act. His silence alone speaks loudly enough and acts on his behalf. But his journey takes on new meaning as we trace back to his youth. 22 years ago, Dragon decided to found what is now known as the Revolutionary Army, motivated after witnessing the events of the Ohara incident, which led to the destruction and annihilation of an entire people and culture. Fortunately, its knowledge was preserved with the help of the race of giants, and potentially with Dragon himself, who was present at the site. Perhaps he was even the one responsible for using his powers to extinguish the fire that destroyed Ohara. 24 years ago, Dragon was present at the execution of Gold Roger in Logetown. His presence there, even if discreet, indicated that even before becoming the leader we know today, Dragon was among the young figures who would shape the destiny of the world. But about 25 years ago, before the beginning of the Great Pirate Era, Dragon was at the head of a smaller group called the Warriors of Liberation, or Warriors of Freedom. This organization served as the embryo for the army that would later gather names like Ivankov and Bartholomew Kuma, in addition to having the scientific support of Vegapunk. We don't know what motivated the creation of this group, but it's strongly speculated that it emerged soon after Dragon left the Marines. And the event that seems to have pushed Dragon to leave the Marines appears to have been the God Valley incident. Finally, 38 years ago, we arrive at God Valley. In chapter 1159, we discovered that Dragon, only 17 years old, took part in the incident that marked the history of the world. At that time, still a young Marine, he was the one who saved Baby Shanks, hiding him inside a treasure chest to protect him from the massacre. So it is very likely that Dragon left the Marines precisely because of the events he witnessed at God Valley. Just as Luffy began his journey as a pirate at 17, Dragon would have done the same, beginning his life as a revolutionary at 17 as well. And one revealing detail is that Dragon already carried the mark we now see stamped on his face. 25 years ago, that mark was present on his left leg, but 38 years ago, it was already on his left arm. This means that the symbol didn't emerge when Dragon founded the Revolutionary Army, nor when he led the Warriors of Freedom. This is a mark that predates his life as a rebel, something much older, accompanying Dragon since his youth, and perhaps even since his birth, because this is a mark that represents Dragon's lineage as someone who carries the blood of the Shandorian race. The Shandorian race and the revolutionaries. In general, the history of the Shandorians closely mirrors the ideals of the revolutionaries. The Shandorian people were marked by a war that endured for 400 years. When the city of Shandora was thrown into the skies, the Skypians proclaimed that land as their own, resulting in the expulsion of the Shandorians. That is why the Shandorians we know fought to reclaim the land that belonged to their ancestors. And this, of course, is no coincidence. Indigenous peoples are precisely a representation of struggle and resistance against dominant powers. And the Shandorians represent exactly the Native American peoples, both in clothing and physical appearance, and especially in culture and purpose. Thus, the Shandorians are a race that embodies struggle and resistance, very similar to the ideals of Dragon and the Revolutionary Army. It is possible, therefore, that Dragon drew inspiration from his ancestors to become the symbol of struggle and freedom that he is today. But we're just getting warmed up. Dragon and Tupac Amaru, historical parallels. The figure of Monkey D. Dragon finds a very interesting parallel in real history with Tupac Amaru II, a Peruvian indigenous leader of the 16th century, who rose up against Spanish colonial rule and is likely the historical figure Dragon was inspired by. Just like Dragon, Tupac Amaru too carried in his identity the heritage of an oppressed people, in his case, the descendants of the Incas, and the spirit of indigenous resistance. His fight was motivated by the attempt to preserve the culture and dignity of his people, in the face of a brutal system of exploitation, something that strongly resonates with the trajectory of the revolutionary leader in One Piece. The first point of comparison lies in their origin. Tupac Amaru was of mixed descent, born from both Spaniards and Incas. This hybrid condition placed him as a bridge between these two worlds. Dragon, by all indications, would also be of mixed descent, the result of the union between a human and a Shandorian. Both carry traits that tie them to indigenous culture, in Dragon's case, the tattoos and physical appearance strongly resembling Shandorian iconography. Another parallel is in how they challenged great empires. Tupac Amaru, too, mobilized a popular army against the Spanish crown, while Dragon organizes the revolutionary army against the world government. Both confronted seemingly unshakable structures, driven by ideals of freedom and justice. The contrast here is clear. In real life, colonizers destroyed cultures, while in One Piece, the world government represses entire peoples and erases their history. Finally, there is the idea of sacrifice and legacy. Tupac Amaru too was ultimately defeated and executed, but his rebellion inspired later movements throughout Latin America. Dragon in One Piece is still active, but this parallel may suggest that Dragon will ultimately die for his cause by the end of One Piece. Dragon, Shandora, and Wiper. The connection between Dragon and the Shandorians grows stronger when analyzing the following details. The tattoo that Dragon bears, revealed in chapter 1159 on his left arm, is one of the most important elements of this entire story. This symbol is quite similar to the markings seen on Shandorian warriors, like Wiper, who also carries red and green tattoos across his body, the same red and green colors present in Dragon's tattoo and clothing. And interestingly, both characters' tattoos are located on the left side of their bodies. In addition, the similarity with Wiper extends to their darker skin tone, long black hair, and even the shared mark of baldness between the two. Guess they both missed out on the manual treatment. In fact, Dragon also resembles another Shandorian named Kalgara, beyond sharing the same dark skin tone and the tribal red tattoos across their bodies and faces. Dragon and Kalgara also share the same Japanese voice actor. Furthermore, while Kalgara resembles Dragon, the boy who was Kalgara's son-in-law looks strikingly similar to Luffy. Just take a look at their faces. Even the village elder wears a canine-shaped hat, just like Garp. In other words, perhaps Garp picked up the habit of wearing that hat after getting involved with a Shandorian woman during one of his adventures, right? It's also worth noting how we still have absolutely no idea about the identity of Dragon's mother, and consequently, Luffy's grandmother. Oda has never made any explicit statement about her, but considering all this evidence, perhaps Oda has already said more than enough for us to draw our own conclusions. And if that weren't enough, even Garp and Kalgara used very similar attacks in their first appearances, both hurling gigantic iron spheres against ships. It's also worth remembering how Baltigo, the former base of the Revolutionary Army, strongly resembles the ancient dwellings of Native Americans, basically caves built into rocky structures. So the truth is that the Shandorians are far more connected to the monkey family than many people realize. The origin of the tattoo. The most consistent hypothesis, then, is that Dragon is a descendant of Shandora through his maternal lineage. If we consider that Garp is just an ordinary human, as ordinary as we can call that old man, the absence of wings on Dragon can easily be explained by the fact that he isn't a pure Shandorian, but rather a mixed blood. This characteristic fits perfectly with the established pattern in One Piece, where children of mixed races can display only part of the inherited traits. Dragon, in this case, would have inherited the darker skin tone, the hair type, and even the tattoo traditions, but not the wings. So, seeing that Dragon has borne this mark since at least the age of 17, it doesn't seem to be something that appeared only with the founding of the Revolutionary Army, as we might have been led to think initially. And piecing everything together, nothing rules out the possibility that Dragon knew and had contact with his mother, and consequently with his family and ancestry. And here comes the question. Why then, in the Skypiea arc, did no one tell Luffy about this? Why did no one mention that Dragon had been connected to the Sky Island? Even though the Shandorians never brought up Dragon's existence during the arc, it's important to remember that very few people knew about their bloodline connection. The information that Luffy was Dragon's son only became public during the Marineford War. So yes, nothing prevents Dragon from having visited Shandora and having had close contact with his maternal ancestors. Dragon could very well have known his mother, experienced and lived within that culture, and, being part of that race, decided to mark his body with a tattoo that represented his lineage. It is worth noting how painting the face is a common practice when indigenous warriors go to war. Therefore, it is possible that Dragon permanently marked his face only when he decided to found the Revolutionary Army and declare war against the world government. And this even draws a parallel with Luffy himself, who also decided to mark his face in order to prove that he was a courageous pirate. Thus, Luffy and Dragon would have marked their faces with a tattoo and a scar to reinforce their own ideals. In fact, we can't even be certain whether Dragon's tattoo isn't also a scar caused by himself, just like Luffy. The connection between Shandora and Nika. A quick topic I wanted to address here is about the relationship between the Shandorians and the sun god Nika. We saw in the Skypiea arc that the Shandorians worshipped the gods of the sun, rain, earth and sea, even going so far as to perform human sacrifices for them. The Shandorians even danced the very same dance of Nika. But the most curious detail comes when we observe Nika's image. Although we don't have a clear view of his appearance, it's evident that Nika possesses traits that resemble Shandorians. Nika dresses exactly like one, but as we've seen, he does not have wings. So it is possible that Nika was originally a Shandorian born without wings, or that he was a foreigner who lived within Shandora's culture during part of his life. Either way, the point I wanted to bring up is that Dragon, being half Shandorian, would mean that Luffy also carries the blood of this race, and consequently, opens the possibility that Luffy carries the very same blood as the sun god Nika. It is worth remembering how Oda has already drawn Luffy in indigenous clothing and tribal tattoos in colored pages, and also drew him on the cover of volume 27, depicted with the wings of the sky races. And if that were not enough, it is worth noting how, in the Skypiea arc, Wiper affirms that only a direct descendant of Kalgara could ring the golden bell, and Luffy rang the bell at the end of the arc. This may indicate that not only Luffy and Dragon possess the blood of the Shandorians, but that they may be direct descendants of the lineage of Kalgara, the hero of Shandora who lived 400 years ago. And finally, the devil fruit of Monkey D. Dragon. The identity of Dragon's fruit is simply one of the most captivating mysteries in the entire story of One Piece. We know that his appearance is usually tied to sudden changes in the weather, unexpected storms, and overwhelming winds. In fact, that is precisely why he has never been caught until now. Ships depend on wind to sail, and against someone who can control the winds and the weather, it becomes nearly impossible to ever reach this man. So let's revisit the three most consistent possibilities up to now. The first possibility, the Logia of Air, the Kaze Kaze no Mi. One of the few Logias that has not yet appeared in the story would be precisely that of air. This devil fruit would allow Dragon to control and transform into the wind itself, manipulating storms, hurricanes, lightning, and entire weather patterns. A simple but extremely functional fruit, which would explain the natural phenomena that always accompany his presence. This would also bring back the weight and importance of Logia fruits, which were once considered the greatest force among devil fruits in One Piece, before mythical Zoans began dominating the story. And one important detail, when Dragon appears on the revolutionary ship, right after saving Sabo, we can see Ivankov surprised as if Dragon had suddenly emerged from absolutely nowhere, literally materializing as the wind itself. The second possibility, a zone of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god of Mesoamerican cultures, who represents wind, the sky, and renewal. A zone of this kind would allow Dragon to take the form of a winged serpent, directly linking his name to the lineage of celestial dragons and serpents. Moreover, Quetzalcoatl has a strong connection with the idea of a spiritual guide and liberator, which perfectly aligns with Dragon's role as the leader of a worldwide revolution. And here lies a curious and perhaps most important detail. At the start of his career as a revolutionary, Dragon was given the epithet of Hangaku Ryu, the rebel dragon. However, Funimation's official English translation, for some reason we don't know, decided to render this epithet as insurgent serpent. To explain, the word Hangaku can be translated as either rebel or insurgent, both meaning essentially the same thing, and the word Ryu can be translated as either dragon or serpent. This is because Eastern dragons are described as creatures that resemble serpents, but it is very suspicious that the official translation specifically chose to interpret it as serpent instead of dragon. So that epithet may very well have been a hint at something that only Funimation knows regarding the true power of Monkey D. Dragon. The third possibility, the mythical zone of the Thunderbird, the legendary Thunderbird, a creature from Native American mythology frequently associated with thunder, storms, and lightning. The mere flap of this colossal bird's wings is said to provoke thunder and bolts of lightning. And here comes the most important detail of all. Dragon's tattoo might be the proof of this. Dragon's tattoo strongly resembles illustrations of this bird found in Native American traditions. The same X-shaped pattern of dragon's tattoo can also be seen in the way the natives drew this divine bird. So this theory directly connects the mark on his face to a real-world mythology, while also reinforcing the parallel between dragon and indigenous figures. All of these are highly consistent possibilities, and any one of them would fit perfectly with Dragon's profile. And I believe that Oda has flirted with all of these options throughout the manga, until he finally made his decision, and I do believe that the man has already decided. Now, will Oda go for the simple route of an Air Logia, or will he fall into the current trend cliché and introduce yet another mythical zone into the story of One Piece? Personally, I think Oda will choose the second option. But what about you? Which of these three fruits would you want Dragon to have? Could Dragon really belong to the lineage of Shandora? Let me know your theories down in the comments. And don't forget to hit that like button, check your subscription, and also watch the latest videos posted here on the channel. Just click the ones that are popping up on the screen right now for you. Until next time, goodbye.